It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Reaction Beanie Yo 217. Day in the neighborhood. My brothers and sisters. Hope y'all enjoyed y'all 4th of July out there, man. Hope y'all had a good time. Me, I went to my mama's house, you know what I'm saying? Me and my family eating good, drinking good, and just enjoying each other's company. Now, the one fucked up thing is, we was supposed to go downtown to watch the fireworks, right? But it started raining. So the fireworks downtown got canceled. And nobody bought fireworks ourselves, you know what I'm saying? Nobody bought them, so it's like, damn, man, we fucked up this year. But I promised myself, every goddamn 4th of July from now on, I'm buying some damn firecrackers. We gonna pop some firecrackers. We gonna see some fireworks, man. But I digress. Hope y'all doing excellent out there today as always, and I'm glad y'all came on back to the channel once again to fuck with the bean. And we finna go to a video that I wanted to watch yesterday, but because of 4th of July, you know what I'm saying, going to spend time with family and all this and that, we couldn't watch it yesterday. But we're gonna check it out today. And that channel that we going to is that boy Mike from that chapter. Going back to Mike, y'all, and the title of this video, what really got me intrigued. Secret evil cult hunted on spring break. Now, it's a secret evil cult hunted. Why would somebody be hunting an evil cult? Unless the fucking evil cult is responsible for whoever hunting them, death of a family or friend of whoever hunting them. You know what I'm saying? Unless they trying to get them back on some revenge type shit. Cause you would think the secret evil cult is the hunter, but they getting hunted by somebody who, I guess, now that I just thought about it, mad at them because of what they did to somebody in their family, or what they did to them. Could possibly be them. I don't know, and I digress. We finna get into it, my brothers and sisters. We gonna find out. But before we find out, y'all know what y'all got to do. Get whatever you might need. Get what you need. We back to Mike once again. Y'all got what y'all need? Y'all ready to go? Then let's fucking go.
Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this old video, I have laryngitis. I had a chest infection for like the past week, and I'm only just getting over it, which is why I sound like this. I sound kind of cool. I might actually try and keep this voice. In this old video, we're talking about the story of Mark Kilroy. He was a good kid, you know, he excelled in academia, he excelled in sports, and he had one of the bright futures, like, directly ahead of him. But we don't talk about bright futures on that chapter. We talk about dark pasts, and this has a hell of a lot of that. This is the ultimate vacation gone wrong, and no, he didn't lose his luggage, he didn't get food poisoning, he did not get pickpocketed. He went on a journey into hell, almost literally. This is the story of one of the most disturbing and disgusting groups imaginable. The stuff boogeymen and nightmares are made of. You know, you got boiling brains in a pot, weird sexual stuff, satanic black magic, sick shit. What started out as, you know, a happy ass trip, some dudes having fun on spring break, quickly became a hell break or something like that, but, you know, sounds better than that. And then it became a manhunt for a sadistic madman who thought he was, and he was, an angel of death. I mean, his name was Adolfo, so let's give it a go.
Let's give it a go and get whatever you may need. Because Mike hyped this story up like it's finna be some sick ass shit, man. Get what you need 2 times.
It all began when it was time to party, brother! After a semester of hitting the books and, you know, eating shit, spring had arrived and summer was just around the corner. And Mark Kilroy and some of his pals, they had big plans for spring break. In 1989, Mark Kilroy was 21 years of age. A handsome, serious kid, serious but exciting and always up for a challenge and something new. New experiences. He and some of his closest friends had grown up together in the town of Santa Fe, which is like a distant suburb of Houston, where the chemicals, from the oil refineries are constant. In school, he was one of them, like all Americans. He was good at the books, he was good at the balls, he was in the Boy Scouts, he was an honor roll student. He was offered basketball scholarships, like the whole 9 yards. He graduated Santa Fe High School in 1986. He played baseball and he had played basketball, and then much to the delight of his parents, Jim and Helen, he then went to do a pre-med course at the University of Texas in Austin. He had dabbled in a couple of other universities before gathering the credits and the grades necessary, but now he seemed settled and focused on what laid ahead. Even turning down an offer from the Austin branch of his fraternity, he was like super serious about hitting the books. He was getting down to it. He didn't want to be out drinking and chasing girls. He was like, it's all about the studies. But he didn't forget what lay behind, and that was his best friends from Santa Fe, and they were the people he was going to party with for spring break. Even though they had all gone their separate ways, they would stay in touch. They would meet up regularly when they were all back in town, and now they were planning this trip, which was something they did every year. And so, growing up in Texas, and now it's spring break at the University of Texas, it was time to hit the road for Padre. This is something they'd been talking about since the school year began, always on the phone to each other every week, excitedly talking about the same thing they'd been talking about like 50 times on the phone already. Going through every single last detail of what they were going to do for this mega break. Padre Island is a big old long piece of dirt that sticks out of a big old chunk of Texas. It's a barrier island, and wouldn't you just love it, because it is filled with bars and resorts and good times, chock full of them. This story is set back in 1989, but even now today, over 30 years later, it is still the destination for spring break. In March, it's crazy with the students ready to rock it with their cock out, with their titties out. It's the place to be. So Mark and his friends, they would all meet back up in their hometown of Santa Fe. They would lash into the car, and then they would put the foot down and empty the gas tank. They had a room booked at what was then the Sheraton Hotel in South Padre, and from there on, bros, beers, babes, more beers, more bros, and then more babes. And this wasn't the first time there. They'd partied on Padre twice before, but this time it was kind of special, because next year, some of them were moving away. They were moving out of Texas. So in all of their minds, it was kind of like, this could be the last time we're all together. The 4 boys are on this trip together. But that was something...
Okay, I gotta go back to the title real quick, y'all, because I'm trying to put this shit together. The title says Secret Evil Cult Hunted on Spring Break. So this group of these 4 dudes, they the evil cult? Do they got something going on that we don't know yet? Because everything seems all peachy and regular right now. You know what I'm saying? They don't seem like a fucking cult. It's something hiding in the closet, ain't it? They hide something in that damn closet. Let's see.
Mark really needed after focusing so hard on the extremely tough semester. As I said, there was no partying, there was no nothing. So now he needed to really blow off steam. He had just finished 2 really tough exams right before the break. And so Mark and his friends, Brad, Bill, and Brent, that's not confusing enough, they drove all night and arrived at the Sheraton Hotel at 10 a.m. That was on Saturday the 11th of March, which was about a day or 2 before everything would get completely crazy. And so the partying began, and they went at it hard. The first thing they did was a swimming pool party, which was sponsored by the local beer company. Then they found out that in their hotel, the room directly across from theirs, there's a bunch of college chicks in there. They partied with them, then they went to a Miss Tanline contest. It rules. They were having like the best time ever. On Saturday, they drove across to Brownsville, a town about half an hour away, to hang there. And on the way, they met a couple of young women from Kansas, asking if they knew how to get to Matamoros, town in Mexico, the twin, essentially, of Brownsville. And Mexico, again, it would also be packed with American students. This whole area was packed, and the students just flocked here. And especially down to Mexico, where, the rules were a little bit looser than they were in America, and the drink was a lot cheaper. So they partied in Matamoros before returning back to Padre Island, trying to sleep off the hangover. Little did any of them know that back in Matamoros, a guy named El Padrino was looking for someone exactly like them. A white spring breaker, a gringo. Not for really any good reason, he was looking for their brains. Quite literally, their brains. They would be offered to Elegua, who's their god, the dark god they were praying to. They would find their victims, and they would force them violently to lie down on an altar and then they would be flayed, they would be skinned, they would be scalped, they would be dismembered, all while alive. Before their
Oh!
hearts would be ripped out. The victim's brain...
Mike gotta be capping, y'all. He cannot be serious, man. He can't be serious, y'all. This cannot be life. Shit like this is only for the movies and the books and shit, right? Oh my God.
would go to El Padrino, the fingers to his lackeys, and all of them would share in eating the heart. Brains, blood, heart, bones, penis, and balls would be offered to the god, and in return they would receive blessings. It was ancient superstitions, sacrifices, a mixture of religions from Africa, from the Aztecs, and Christianity. It was to remove curses and to destroy their enemies, and they needed an army of souls to do it. That's what they were doing. They were stealing and they were eating souls. And so they now needed a gringo to summon the Great Knight. What better time to get one than at spring break? Brownsville had been getting darker the past number of years as the drugs trade only grew, growing exponentially. Violence had become more and more prevalent, the economy. Matamoros just across the border, the very, very same. But the boys weren't concerned about that. They were partying hard. They were barely sleeping. Like I said, they knew this could be one of their last spring breaks. They didn't want to waste a second of it sleeping. You gotta be going hard every second. On March 13th, it was to Brownsville, but the mood was kind of like meh. They wanted to rage harder, and so they went across the border to Matamoros. That night alone, there was 15,000 American students partying in Matamoros along the main drag alone and in downtown. But on the outskirts of downtown, gunfire was a common occurrence, as was murder and theft. They were going in and out of bars, looking for the parties, which was everywhere. The party was everywhere, looking for girls. And Mark, he was in there like swimwear with a Miss Tanline contestant. But come 2 a.m. that night, Bill, Mark's closest friend out of the entire group, he said, listen, we need to go to bed. We're running on fumes at this point. They were all fairly pissed at this stage, so Bill, Brent, and Brad, they stumbled out of the bar they were in. They started walking along the main drag back towards America. There was a bridge which crossed the border back into America, right? And Mark was right behind them. He was chatting away to Miss Tanline over here. They were only about a block away from the bridge that would take them back into Brownsville, car, home. At one point, Mark was talking to this Miss Tanline contestant. He was talking to her just outside the house. She was crashing in. Bill was just around the corner. He was peeing. While Brad and Brent, they were a distance ahead, walking away. Mark, he was alone. And Bill just happened at one point to turn towards Mark. And he saw Mark talking to a Mexican fella. He didn't really hear anything he was saying, but he saw him, turned away. And when he looked back, Mark was gone. Mark, he had been shoved into a truck and he'd been driven away. They were driving Mark, as you can imagine, absolutely terrified in the back of this truck. They drove for a couple of blocks. The driver then had to stop off and take a leak. At this point, Mark managed to bust out of the back of the truck and sprint down the road, only for a car that was following the truck to pull over. Guys got out of the car, grabbed Mark, dragged him into the car, and off they went. From there, Mark was dragged into hell. Mark's friends, when they realized he was gone, they searched Matamoros till dawn. Eventually, though, after not finding him for hours, they were like, okay, maybe he made it back to Padre Island. Maybe he's back at the hotel already. Of course, when they got back to the Sheraton Hotel, Brad, Bill, and Brent were even more dismayed to not find him. And so they began thinking, all right, they were starting to panic, but at this point you're thinking, oh, maybe he hooked up with Miss Tanline. She's going to give him a ride back. He'll turn up, right? Wrong. It was then they went to the South Padre Island Police Department and they reported Mark Kilroy missing. Now, this was taken seriously from the get-go. They generally did take this very seriously, as you would hope and as you would imagine. But kids going missing during spring break, it's not like an uncommon occurrence. The first thing the police did, they went to the Mexican side and they checked the jails there, they checked the hospitals there. He was not there. Things, in fact, went into a higher gear than normal because Mark's father, Jim Kilroy, he had a brother named Ken Kilroy who worked in the U.S. Customs Service Department. So Ken was quickly able to put the word out, let's put a bit of effort behind this, lads. Soon, Mark's parents were down in Brownsville and Matamoros handing out flyers, asking in every establishment if they had seen him, if they knew anything. There was a task force set up specially for Mark. 10 people working full-time on this. And the friends, they were scrutinized hard. Bill, Brent, and Brad. You know, were you guys doing drugs? Were you banging hoes? No. They were clean as a whistle. The hardest thing they were doing was alcohol. These were not, people who get caught up with the wrong crowd with cartels or any shit like that where you think something might go wrong for Mark. I mean, it did, but they didn't know it. They were simply there drinking, they were flirting, they did not get lucky, I know that game, and that was it. Last time they'd seen Mark, he was speaking to a Mexican guy, end of. There were no leads at all for what happened to Mark. The investigators were giving everything they had to solve this case, but no cracks, no nothing. No matter how much media attention it got, how often Jim and Helen walked the streets with flyers, offering $15,000 for information, it was leading nowhere. One Mexican official, Officer Benitez Ayala, he then took over the case on the Mexican side as they were essentially kind of joining forces, and he began cracking skulls. He was like the top guy looking after this on the Mexican side, and rumors began that it was a group of students from the nearby university. They had been kidnapping children, sacrificing them to Satan, to dark gods, to all this kind of stuff, and they had taken Mark. Or it was, the police already knew exactly where Mark was, but they were too scared to go after him. On the 4th of April, the Kilroys, Mark's parents, they got a call saying, "We have Mark, $10,000 and we will release him, and if you go to the police, we will start sending you his fingers." Now, the callers were 2 men in the Galveston County Jail, but of course Mark's parents, desperate to find them, giving it their all. They wanted to believe them. Of course, then the police eventually traced the call, found the 2 men, arrested and charged them. But when the police, when Jim Kilroy would go to the police and say, "What's the latest on you finding my son?" They would say, "We got nothing. No cracks." They would you're kind of like, maybe you might be shit out of luck. Jim, he'd be like, "Okay." Take out the flyers. He would start walking the streets of Matamoros once again. The police began to become worried about his parents' safety. That they might get in trouble, that somebody might kill them. That's how hard they were going at this. Then,
shout out to his mom and daddy, man. They was determined to find their son. And shout out to, I think his name was Roy Kelly, the guy who really got the investigation going. Like, they put in a lot of effort on this investigation, man. Shout out to everybody, bro, who was in on this. Like, they trying their best to find Mark. They trying their best. You know what I'm saying? But it's just so fucked up because you got all these rumors and shit flying around also. And then you got motherfuckers calling from jail talking about they got their son and they just give me $10,000, we'll let them go. Like, you got all that outside noise in the shit too. But his daddy and his mama are determined. They what they call it, they got tunnel vision on trying to find Mark. Much respect.
A regular Sunday afternoon, the break in the case came, in kind of a weird way. On April 9th, a man named Serafin Hernandez, nephew of the local crime lord Elio Hernandez, ran a roadblock in Matamoros. Serafin Hernandez and his uncle Elio were big into the drugs business, they were big into the cartels, and they simply, of course, did not give a single shit about any police roadblock. Now, they should have, because this was an international roadblock between Texas and between Mexico, and he just like, vroom, fucking dust in the air. But instead of the police chasing him down, sirens blazing, lights going off, they were like, no, let's see where he goes. Let's follow him. Maybe he'll lead us to bigger fish. He did. He led them to a ranch, Santa Elena, just outside the city of Matamoros. It was there that they organized armed guards, soldiers, and they stormed the place. Arrested was Serafin Hernandez, his uncle Elio, a couple of other gangsters, and a Domingo Bustamante, who was the caretaker of the ranch. A lot of drugs were found on the ranch. Like, a lot of drugs. Cocaine, weed, cell phones, a lot of cars, assault rifles, the kind of things you would imagine you'd find in a cartel bust. But most interestingly, when the caretaker, Domingo, he was shown a picture of Mark Kilroy, asking if he recognized him, Domingo said yes. He said, Mark Kilroy was here. Domingo said he'd given Mark something to eat. Then Mark was taken into a shack on the ranch. He was never seen again. Inside that shack, the smell of decaying flesh was overwhelming. And they saw this.
Oh!
That's called a nganga. Inside it was skulls, bones, various pieces of flesh, brains, and some other items. The floor was covered with blood, candles still lit. Around the room lay machetes, hammers, a large oil drum that had been used to boil people. It was a slaughterhouse. The gang members, they seemed to enjoy the reaction the police had to witnessing this. Police members were getting sick, and the gang members were just laughing. That's when they began digging. The gang members forced to at gunpoint, and on that ranch, 15 mutilated bodies would be found, including Mark Kilroy's. Mark had been buried 3 feet down, and missing from him was his legs, his fingers, his brains, his balls, and his penis. He had been horrifically tortured and then brutally murdered, sacrificed by this cult. The night Mark had been taken in that truck, when he almost escaped and the car that was following him grabbed him, dragged him back, he was taken to that ranch. He was ordered out and he was told to sit on a hammock under a tree. He did so, and he was surrounded by armed gunmen. It's impossible to imagine how terrifying this must have been. He was in that hammock until dawn, when at dawn the caretaker, Domingo Bustamante, he came out and he gave Mark some food. He gave him some milk and some scrambled eggs, which Mark was starving and he ate. Now Mark would ask the guards though, what's going on? What are you going to do? Is this a ransom? The guards would say nothing's going to happen to you. He was then taken into a shack where the Nganga was kept. He was bound at ropes, duct tape was put over his mouth. He was then brought to their leader, El Padrino. He was tortured and he was sodomized for hours, they said, before El Padrino brought him outside, knelt him down, and with a machete shot him at the back of the neck. The police were asking, who the hell is this El Padrino and where is he? His name was Adolfo Costanzo, and he was literally the devil. Adolfo de Jesus Costanzo was born on the 1st of November 1962 in Miami to parents who had fled Cuba.
Hold on, before we get into Adolfo, y'all, I just gotta say this, man. I am so fucking mind blown at this shit. This one right here just got my mind fucking blown. Like, Mike, he wasn't lying at the beginning of the fucking video when he was letting us know this gonna be some crazy shit. Cause it's like he just keep telling us more crazy shit, bruh. This one is blowing my fucking head off my neck. Seriously. Alright, let's find out about El Padrino. Crazy don't do him justice. Let's just find out about him.
Adolfo was obsessed with his appearance from a young age, and he was a good-looking guy, and he knew it. He knew how to turn heads. He also knew how to freak the shit out of people. When he was in school, and if somebody teased him, the next day, you would, outside your house, you would find a severed animal head and blood everywhere. He was like Damien or something from The Omen. You did not mess with little Adolfo, and this was like, he wasn't like a bully. He's not like he's gonna beat you up. He's like, he's gonna do some sick shit that will curse you, or something like that. The father would leave the family when Adolfo was quite young, and the mother would take Adolfo to San Juan in Puerto Rico. There, little Adolfo would become an altar boy. But it was weird, right? His mother would remarry to a very successful businessman, though, who was like weirdly afraid of Adolfo. He was like this little creepy kid who was around that house at all times. Him and his mother would go into the rooms that, you weren't allowed in, and you just hear these weird chants coming from the room. This guy would eventually die from what was said to be cancer, leaving Adolfo and his mother with a lot of money. They would then move back to Miami, and Adolfo's mother would remarry. This guy was also scared of Adolfo and would beat him. He disappeared. See, Adolfo's mother was a mayomberia, which is like a witch. She practiced black magic, and this was something she passed on to Adolfo. She taught him about magic, occult, voodoo, mixing African magic with that of the Aztecs, and a dollop of Christianity from a young age. As a teen, he began practicing Paulo Mayombe, a religion which developed in Cuba among those of African descent, and it is a mix of all I listed above. It focuses a lot on like spirits of the dead, sacrifices, different deities, and human remains. Like grave robbing is very common. It's viewed within and without as a type of witchcraft. You can cast evil, or you can remove it, do misfortunes on people, that kind of thing. And it's very, very secretive. Reportedly, though, it's very widespread in Cuba, especially among the kids these days. I don't know, it's kind of badass, to be honest. But Adolfo over here, he took that and he took it to the next level. In 1981, Adolfo was back in Miami and he was taking a few classes there. He was arrested a couple of times though for shoplifting, and he later moved to Mexico City. And he had these like weird powers of like attraction. He wasn't exactly like a charming guy, but he could just gather people to him. He was in Mexico City. He was able to get in with the powerful folk, artists, landowners, businessmen, politicians. He just seemed to be able to gather them and almost like bend them to his will. Drug lords too. He dabbled in...
This is the wrong motherfucker to be able to, you know what I'm saying, convince people to drink his Kool-Aid, so to speak, like Jim Jones did. He worse than fucking Jim Jones. To have this power to be able to convince even drug lords, like looking at this man and believing in what the fuck he's saying and shit. You know what I'm saying? This is the last guy on earth you want that be able to get people to believe what he's saying. Oh my God, bro, Danielle. He grew up fucked up. This man grew up fucked up. His mama fucked him up with that witchcraft shit. Then they type witchcraft mixing all type of... They got a whole big pile of gumbo. You know, a whole big pile of shit of witchcraft and voodoo and all these different religions, African, and got some little Christian little shit in it. Like, bro, they just mixing all this shit up and look what it is. Look what they concocted when they got done mixing up that stew. This is... Let's go.
In tarot readings, and he did a lot more than that. He would give you a cleansing ritual, 30 grand a pop, where he would remove the evil, you know, that somebody had cast on. You would lie down on a bloody altar next to a goat. There would be some weird sexual energy, and your body would be covered with like herbs and oils and that sort of thing. And then animals, both dead and alive, would be passed over you. Blood would be cut. They'd be cut, you know, sacrificed blood drip all over you. And they'd be, essentially, they try and put the evil that would be cast on you into an egg. All the while Adolfo was there. He was in robes, muttering strange chants from distant lands. But over time, these rituals would involve less and less animal blood and more human blood. People would be sacrificed instead of goats, and Adolfo's followers would grow and grow, believing he was giving them power. They would lure people in to sacrifice to their dark gods. They would flay people alive, cutting their skin off while they were screaming, you know, scalping them, skinning them. And the point was they had to be alive and in pain for this to work. And after that, while you were alive, they would cut you open and rip your heart out. And they would all share in the blood. It was made as painful as possible for the victim to try and keep the victim alive as long as possible, because they had to get your soul. To quote Cauldron of Blood by Jim Shoots, the soul of the victim must be taught to fear its killer totally and for all time in order to serve the killer loyally and forever. It must be drawn up near the surface of the body, quickened and enlivened, then broken and subjugated totally. Brains would be removed, fingers and blood drained into an inganga, the cauldron. The parts put in it, the blood put in it, and the blood boiled, essentially trying to make it like a stew, a human stew. Then it was devoured. Except the heart. The heart wasn't put in it. The heart, it was important for the heart to be eaten while it was still warm. From 1987 to 1989, Mexican City Police found 8 disfigured corpses at the bottom of a lagoon, tied to cement blocks. All were Adolfo's, and a hell of a lot more would be found. Adolfo was often joined by his lover, Sara Aldrete. Sara was a young woman born in Matamoros, Mexico, but in 1985 she moved across from Matamoros to Brownsville, getting a visa and attending Texas Southmost College. She was doing work studies, so she worked for the college in lieu of paying tuition, and she was studying physical education. In, the college, she blossomed. She was head of the booster club for the soccer team that was really popular. She was beloved by students. She was beloved by faculty. For a time, she was dating a guy named Serafin Hernandez, who you might remember who I mentioned before. He was studying in the college at the same time Sarah was. He was studying law enforcement, if you can believe that. As you can probably also imagine, he wasn't studying it because he wanted to be a cop. His family was in the drugs business. He was studying it so he could become a better drug smuggler. doing it to help the
Wow.
fam, especially his powerful uncle Elio Hernandez. This was a cartel that smuggled major amounts of cocaine, cane, and weed. But Sarah would later leave him when she went to a tarot card reading by this strange guy from Cuba. She was inexplicably attracted to him. Now, never once in this Texas college did she ever seem interested, displayed any interest in the occult, or anything like that, but behind closed doors. On the surface, Sarah, sweet, innocent kids, you know, everybody's favorite, popular. But, you know, back when she was back in across the border in Matamoros with Adolfo, she was his priestess. The staff at the college had no clue about this, but the students became more and more aware. She would give these weird-ass speeches about the occult and how she was this high priestess and explaining dark magic to all of these people, like super, super serious. And Adolfo was using her to get to the Hernandez family. As I said, she used to date Serafin, nephew of the drug cartel lord. First, he would use Sarah to get Serafin to join what would become known as the Matamoros cult. Then to Elio. Adolfo got Sarah to sleep with Elio so he could get closer to him. And soon Adolfo had this entire drug smuggling family under his control too. Elio Hernandez, the don of the family, would become a priest for Adolfo too. Soon Adolfo was demanding half the profits of this drug smuggling business, and who could resist it? And Adolfo and Sarah were very important to this Matamoros drug cartel. After all, Adolfo held their very souls in his hands. At times, they would dress in black robes around a bloody altar while Adolfo stood in the center wearing a white robe, and young men would be forced to lie down on this altar, often violently forced to lie down on this altar, and Adolfo would chant, and he would do signs, and the spirits would take over him. Then duct tape would be put over the victim's mouth, blades would come out, as would the inganga. Adolfo would teach Elio this, who became very adept, very, very quickly, at cutting off the victim's legs, fingers, penis, while they were still alive, and then cutting open their chest and ripping their heart out. So now you know the inspirations for all those Mexican beheading videos.
Okay, I gotta go and say this too real quick. This is the most sick fucking Mike from that chapter video I have ever seen, man. And you know we done watched a lot of Mike videos over here on our channel, y'all. But this is the most disturbing, just crazy. Like the shit he's saying, just like I said, sound like a movie, man. Some shit you watch on damn Netflix, man. This is cray fucking Z.
And Elio and Serafin would be arrested at the ranch where a lot of this was done, and they would tell all of this to the police.
Crazy.
They began to talk, and you kind of got to wonder why they were so involved in this cult and this church. Why did they talk? Well, it's kind of funny. The Mexican police had a really good technique for making you talk. They got carbonated water, bottle of carbonated water. They shook it up. They shook it up real good. And then they opened it really quickly and shoved it up your nose. The carbonated water would explode into your skull. It was extremely painful, and it left no visible signs of torture. You do it a few times, people will say whatever you want. It made people shit themselves. It was so painful. If you did it a couple of times in a couple of minutes, you would be a quivering piece of jelly on the floor. But where was Adolfo? At the time the scene on the ranch was discovered, Adolfo and Sarah were actually in Miami, and they were on their way back to Matamoros. Little did they know they were soon becoming the subject of international attention and a manhunt. News from all over the world was covering the story. It was insane. Like a satanic cult, literally chopping people up and torturing them to death, praying to gods, this kind of shit. It sounds like something out of a shitty horror movie, but this was real and it was terrifying. And this was in the late 80s when the satanic panic was like... So before they heard the news that the scene had been discovered, they were already back to the ranch. They got into Brownsville, and they stayed in Brownsville at a Holiday Inn. And then it was the next morning Sarah put on the TV and saw the news.
Authorities say that Mark Kilroy was grabbed somewhere near here by satanic cult members who motioned him towards their car. Signed confessions from some of the suspects reveal that at one point Mark was able to escape into the streets of this town, but that he was recaptured and taken to the Santa Elena Ranch. 25 miles into Mexico, the shallow graves of a dozen found, 2 still buried, tell the story of a drug-dealing cult led by a Cuban godfather. Inside a small shack, ritualistic candles and reminders of torture. Outside, a cauldron that authorities say was filled with human brain matter, blood, and animal parts.
I cannot understand how somebody can just tell somebody else pick him up and go kill him. I have a hard time personally recognizing it. I can't believe it can be done.
Authorities believe Mark and the others were victims of a group that transported some 1,000 pounds of marijuana into Texas each week, that the Cuban padrino or godfather was possibly linked to a form of voodoo, Santeria, practiced in the Caribbean. The men, seemingly without remorse, all talked about a cult that killed to please its godfather, that abducted Kilroy because the godfather wanted an Anglo, part of the spring break crowd.
Sarah, she raced home to her parents' house. She grabbed what clothes she could. She tried to remove what evidence she could. She went back to the Holiday Inn in Brownsville, and then her and Adolfo, they went to McAllen, and they flew from McAllen to Mexico City. There in Mexico City, they hid with their followers while this international manhunt was going, and they were moving around to these various safe houses in Mexico City. And people would see Adolfo, you know, El Diablo, all over. He was seen in Chicago trying to steal children. He was seen in New Mexico filling up gas. Real, like, boogeyman type shit. You know, people were seeing him, ooh, he's behind you. There were a number of raids in Mexico City trying to find him, and they found stuff, just not him. They found bloody altars, a lot of gay porn. Okay. They would find blood, they would find bones, whether these were from older rituals or if he was keeping this up while still on the run, who knows. But in May of 1989, so about a month after the scene was discovered, a known accomplice of Adolfo's was seen in a supermarket in Mexico City. And so they followed him. It was believed he was buying stuff for Adolfo. Correct. Adolfo was living in a shitty little apartment with his accomplices at the time. It was actually in quite a nice neighborhood though. But Adolfo and Sarah, they knew the net was closing and they would not be taken alive. They had drugs and they had guns and they were going to go out with a party. And soon their apartment was surrounded by police. Adolfo, he was paranoid. He was not the same guy he had been. Not the same guy who had gained control of an entire drugs cartel. They started...
You know what's so funny real quick? Or good, or however you want to look at it? They caught Adolfo and his crazy ass wife the same way that they found out about the whole big ranch or whatever it was, the place where all these bodies and shit was. The police did the same tactic. They followed the motherfucker. They followed one of their accomplices, one of Adolfo's accomplices or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Instead of just throwing the lights on right then and there, like at the roadblock, instead of just stopping, you know what I'm saying, jumping in the car, throwing the lights on, the whole police chase. Nah, we just gonna follow him and see where he lead us. Just like this one, man. When they caught him in the supermarket, nah, we just gonna follow him and see where he lead us. And this shit has led them to Adolfo. But it seemed like Adolfo and his wife gonna kill themselves, and that just right there just gonna piss me the fuck off. But let's see.
Started shooting at the police outside. Adolfo, a gunfight began between the cultists and the police, and Adolfo was screaming chants and rituals the entire time. He put his money on the stovetop, setting fire to his own money, saying they were not gonna get it. He then walked over to one of his henchmen, El Dubi, and he told El Dubi to shoot him and to kill him. And he said, if you don't do it, things will go bad for you in hell if you do not obey. He obeyed, and Adolfo was shot dead. Everybody else kind of gave up then, now that their great leader was dead. Sarah, she was arrested. She said she was sorry to hear about Mark, and she'd actually been held hostage here the entire time. Really? All the remaining members of the cult were imprisoned, and Sarah Aldrete received a 62-year sentence. Elio and Serafin received 67 years. Sarah continued and continues to say she's innocent in the whole ordeal, that she was mistreated and taken hostage by Adolfo. The ranch, well, after 15 bodies were found, they brought in a curandero, which is like a native healer, a native shaman in Latin America to kind of exercise and purify the place. He did so, and then they burnt it to the ground. They did not look for any more bodies, which you know they would have found. And so ends the story of Mark Kilroy, of Adolfo Costanzo, and the Matamoros cult. Gruesome. Yeah. It's kind of like, it's literally just stuff out of a horror movie, where they embraced the disturbingness, the gruesomeness, the violence. That was what made it for them. It was all part of being as grotesque as they possibly could, so they could gather souls for their army. It's real sick shit. And a very horrific ending for Mark Kilroy, who was unlucky enough to find, as well as all the other countless victims that the cult had. I tried to keep this story pretty succinct. I know at times in videos I can go on these like lengthy tangents about history, and I do apologize for that, but I just love talking about history, especially dark history. But in this one, I mean, there's so many victims. You just lose perspective after a while and just goes, this guy, horrifically tortured and sacrificed and brutally murdered. But yeah, there you go. It's a piece of dark history. I really enjoyed doing these longer stories about, you know, dark history, and I hope you enjoy them too. It's just something nice to do something different every once in a while from the regular true crime. But yeah, expect more of both very, very soon. Hopefully I will sound better very, very soon. Also, I've had like LASIK, but I kind of figured you guys would think I look weird if I didn't wear my glasses. So I don't actually need them anymore. But yeah, I figured I should probably just still wear them, at least kind of transition into not wearing glasses. So yeah, there you go. There's a few other like dark history stories, by the way, I also want to cover really soon. Some like older ones, like hundreds of years old, tales of survival, or like these crazy stories of these animal attacks I think would be really, really interesting. But until the next one, please look after each other, and please look after yourselves, and I'll look after my voice. But as always, I love you. Mike out.
Whoo-wee, man. My brothers and sisters. Mike talking about he be going on tangent. He can go on a tangent. I can go on a tangent about this goddamn story. But I ain't trying to make my video too long either, man. And I gotta say, boy, if Mike, Mike, if you ever watch this damn video right here, if you ever see it, I'm 100% behind you, bro. Do more stories of these dark history and whatever. You know what I'm saying? Do more of that dark shit. Go on, take your chance. Keep doing the true crime now, no doubt. But it seems like Mike about headed towards a Mr. Ballin type channel. You know what I'm saying? But keep doing the true crime. But I'm really excited to see what Mike got in the future for us, y'all. Like I said, man, this is the most gruesome, horrible, just disturbing story I ever heard from Mike, y'all, and it was fucking great. It was good as fuck. It's unbelievable as hell, but it's actually real, so we gotta believe it. You know what I'm saying? All the evidence is there, even though it sounds like Stephen King fucking wrote this shit or something. Crazy, man. Crazy, y'all. I think one more thing I'll say about just the whole story is, at the end, the motherfucker gonna tell one of his dudes to shoot him. He went out like a bitch. He went out like a punk ass motherfucker, man. I'm glad the damn lady got caught. She talking about she was being held hostage. Lady, stop it. Stop it. Just stop it. I'm glad she got them damn 60 years. See, that's what I like, y'all. I like for them to have to go to prison and suffer. You know what I'm saying? They gonna suffer when they die too, I believe that. But I like for them to have to go to prison and just be stripped of all freedom. You know what I'm saying? I'm glad that she getting that. All the mother dudes doing pretty nice sentences for their age. She got like 60 years, so by the time she probably more than likely ain't gonna never get out. She gonna die in prison. I ain't gonna lie, y'all. This damn story then gave me a little headache though. Like, it was blowing my mind so much, it feel like my damn blood pressure started to rise, man. And then she started to make my head hurt, man. How did I digress, my brothers and sisters? I ain't gonna hold y'all no longer, man. Cause like, I really want to talk about a whole bunch of other shit, but I feel like we covered enough. And until I see y'all again, my brothers and sisters, make sure you hit the like button, comment, subscribe, and do all that for me. And I got one more thing to say. Love, peace, and happiness. Stay safe. Don't stop. Keep going. Yeah.